Alright, so I'm going to do some kind of nerdy math with you guys, okay? And this is about sugar, alright? So, firstly, when I make tea, I use brown sugar, which actually is healthier than refined white sugar. The only problem with brown sugar is it rots your teeth. That's the difference. Uh, so, there's that. And it has to do with how easily your body can break down said sugars because there's impurities in brown sugar and it's not refined. It's a little bit easier for your body to break down. Now, brown sugar comes from cane sugar. White refined sugar, it can come from cane sugar, but it also can come from beets. And beets aren't a bad food, they're actually really healthy for you. But the sugar itself is really bad. Now, moving on, so if I make a 3 liter thing of tea using brown sugar, I use about 1 cup of brown sugar. Okay, so that's a quarter cup. Well, in that jug, that 3 liters is about 8 servings. Okay, 8 servings, 8 glasses of tea. Each glass is about, I'm gonna say, roughly 18 ounces. I could be wrong on that, but let's just assume it's 18 ounces. Okay. Now, doing the math on the amount of sugar, a whole cup of sugar, it's about 7 ounces, 200 grams. In the case of brown sugar, because brown sugar has less density, there's air pockets, there's all that. Now, this tea started hot and then was chilled, so we're just going to assume that there was no sugar burn off, because that's the thing. White refined sugar doesn't burn off like brown sugar does, and that does have to do with, again, with the impurity contents. And refining cane sugar into white sugar is burning off those impurities, by the way. So we have all that. Now, per glass, it's about 49 grams of sugar, 50. We're just going to round up to 50 to be a little more exact. So a 12-ounce can of Coca-Cola, well, that's 39 grams of sugar, roughly. It's actually closer to 40. So, 40 grams versus 50 grams, 18 ounce versus a 12 ounce. Well, if you do the math, per ounce, my tea comes out to like 2.75. Okay. Coca-Cola comes out to 3.25. All right. Coca-Cola per ounce of sugar is like 25% more. So a whole can of Coca-Cola for a smaller volume is 125% the value of 1 can of tea. And Coca-Cola is not the sweetest soda out there. It's really not. It's not the sweetest tea out there either. So, with all that being said, well, what about my tea? The tea that I make is like sickly sweet. You drink it and you just get hit with immediate sugar. You get hit with immediate sugar, you get hit with that immediate sweetness, and then the black tea flavor comes in the aftertaste. And I prefer brown sugar because it just tastes better to me. With that being said, though, it's just straight black tea, no additives, because it's really, really cheap. And then the brown sugar itself is just brown sugar, no additives, no preservatives, no aspartame, no crap. So there's 2 parts of that. One is I'm not drinking a bunch of chemicals. That's the very first thing. And 2, I'm getting less sugar per volume, and it tastes sweeter than the thing that has more sugar. And now if we focus on that part of it, not only that, but could you imagine if Coca-Cola and these other like brand drinks didn't have the artificial sweeteners like aspartame in them? The sugar content would be way higher to get the same amount of sweetness and consistency, and the what we call the Mexican Cokes. The Coca-Cola is from Mexico because they use actual cane sugar. They're using a lot of it. We're talking nearly like triple the amount of sugar per ounce here. So we're looking at like 10 grams of sugar per ounce, like actually, closer to 12. So, and in that soda, it's good, but it's not sickly sweet. Like, it's not extremely sweet like my tea. It was kind of a thing where it's like, if you just make your shit at home and you make things your preference, even if you go absolutely ridiculous into the deep end, because my tea is extremely sweet, it's still healthier. It just like, and it kind of goes into this ideology. I don't know if you guys know about the fucking children's TV show actor. He plays, I don't remember the guy's name. He plays Spartacus. Yeah, that guy like does a whole like athleticism thing. Like, that guy is like, by the way, he's like 60 and he's still doing insane push-ups and stuff. But it goes in this whole thing, and this is something he was saying all the way back in the 90s. Remember, I was born in the 90s, so he's probably saying it before I was even born. The further you stray away from the natural element of food, because, again, brown sugar and black tea, that's as natural as it gets, and it's just straight, like there's nothing else in it. The further you stray away from nature itself, the less healthy things become. And, that's something people are saying a lot nowadays. But it's like, if you break it down into bare bones math on things like sugar, like, you can see it. You can calculate it. So, it's just kind of an epiphany thing, where I wanted to do the math on things, because I'm curious. And now, is my formula exact? No, absolutely not. I would have to break out beakers, and I would have to extract materials, calculate the contents of said materials, and then put everything back together, essentially. So I would have to make the tea, unmake the tea, and then make the tea again. I would literally have to break out a scale and whatnot. And I will explain that too. If you guys don't want to listen to that, please just stop watching the video now, because it's going to get some really nerd shit. So, first thing I'd have to do is I'd have to calculate and measure the amount of water I'm going to add to the tea. Okay? So I would, pour the pot, and I'd measure the pot itself to find the weight of the pot, add the water, and then measure the weight of that to figure out the exact weight. Add the tea packets, boil it all off, remove said tea packets, calculate the weight of that, add the sugar in, boil all of that, calculate the weight of that again, because all this data is important. Okay. Boil it all off, or, calculate the weight of it before I boil it again, with the sugar, and then boil that again to figure out how much sugar is still present even after the burn off. Then I would take all of that, chill all of that and everything, get it into drinking state, because that does make a difference too. Take all of that, measure it again, write more notes down, and then this is when you would break out the beaker set. You would need a I don't remember the names of these tools. Well, you need a beaker. That's the very first thing you need. And you need to pour a section of that tea and figure out the weight and volume of that. And you need to do that 3 times so that you have an average, because each beaker volume, even if you pour the exact same amount of volume, there's going to be discrepancies. Okay. With each of those, we're going to do little condensation coils. It's this little curly thing. And then, you cook one side and the condensation boils up and it goes out the other side, and you're going to connect that to another beaker. Okay. And that all the moisture and all the other things are going to burn off into that. So you're separating moisture, impurities, and other things from tea and whatever is in the sugar. Okay, so there's sugar and then whatever in the black tea itself. You're separating the physical and the liquid mass from each other. Okay. Have I lost you yet? Now you're going to calculate the weight of one end. You're going to calculate the weight of the other. You're going to record both of those. And you got to do this 3 times to get your average. And then after you do all of that, you put it back together. And then, so by that you got to add the 2 things together and then add the same volumes of overall all water from you started from the very beginning, recook everything, re-chill everything, and then calculate the weight of that. Because you need an average and then another average. Then you take your average of your 3 averages to figure out exactly how much sugar you have per volume. And if you want to be consistent and perfect, you would need a larger sample size. So you would have to do this over and over again until you get a satisfactory, consistent, repeatable result. So you would have to make probably like 500 batches of tea and do this each time, calculating 3 different averages. So if you followed along, you understand that's like 1,500 averages, 300 or 3 times 500. Not a fun time, but you can also just do the math and get close. You don't have to be exact. I'm sure Coca-Cola has theirs down exactly, but at no point does the close mathematical way of doing things, at no point is it off by a whole 10. Like, that's absurd. With Coca-Cola and everything, they've definitely done their math and everything to be exact. And again, being off by a whole 10 is already, a whole 1/5 on sugar is already absurd. So, with the Coca-Cola thing and the cane sugar version of Coca-Cola being off by a whole 120 is even more ridiculous. So with that being said, no, I don't have $200 of chemical equipment. That's the very first thing. And secondly, I don't have 500 employees that are all scientists that all know how to do these things. And lastly, I don't have 6 to 7 years of research to do things. So I'll stick with the math. But, regardless, there's no way cane sugar, Coca-Cola, or normal Coca-Cola is going to be more healthy than my tea. The math doesn't add up for that. And even if my math was slightly off, it still wouldn't add up. But we can do exact math. If one of you guys wants to give me $1 million and let me do research for a decade, basically.